And you've just heard Roma Rose and Mother of the Boy in the band. And I'm delighted to be joined by Roma now. Hello, Roma.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. So tell us about Mother of the Boy in the band, because it does tell a story.
Yes, so Mother of the Boy in the Band is a song which I co-wrote with two amazing songwriters, one of them based in England and one in Nashville, Jessica Sharman and Femke. And we got together to write a song inspired by the day John Lennon died. And Jess had been listening to a radio show actually talking about the anniversary of his death, and she sort of thought that's a really interesting angle to look at. So we started talking about it, and then we were also thinking about boy bands or bands generally and the kind of rise to fame and the hysteria and what that must be like for their closest family members. And then if somebody dies, what it must be like when the whole world, it seems to be mourning that person too, and what that's like for the kind of close family. So that's where it started from. And then we started delving really deep into John Lennon and his life and his mum and his relationship to his mum. And he kind of had two female figures, his biological mum and then his auntie who sort of brought him up. Yeah, so the song kind of looks at that story and looks at the day he died, but from a mother's viewpoint.
Yeah, it's such an interesting take because it was such an iconic moment, clearly, along with Martin Luther King and Kennedy and all these things. That were all, the people that were around at that time kind of think, well, I remember the day that happened. But you tend not to think about the more personal relationships, even between band members that must have been kind of been going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think, the public, when a public figure dies, everyone feels so invested and like it has an effect on them, like when celebrities die that I'm inspired by or look up to, like it hurts so much and you can feel that, but then it just must be so strange for the actual friends and family to be feeling that real, grief, and then having all these strangers really kind of feeling it as well. It must be in a way quite warming, I don't know, but that was kind of where it came from and what we were looking at. And then we decided that we would release it on the anniversary of his death, which is why it came out in December.
It seems to me that, looking back at your other songs, that you are a bit of a storyteller as a songwriter. I mean, do you think that's a fair assessment?
Oh, well, I hope so. My training is as an actor, so I went to drama school and I work as an actor as well. Mainly since I had my first child, I've kind of been working mainly in animation and video games, doing voice acting with a bit of TV and theatre when it was happening before COVID kicked off. So yeah, I think telling stories is definitely where my sort of training and came from, and the thing that I love doing more than anything.
Because we'll hear a previous single, Earned Me, after we finish speaking. But that's another example to me of you telling a story, but one which is, as the best stories are, relatable to other people. They will have examples of difficult relationships as that song kind of, plays out.
Oh, thanks. Well, yeah, that song was actually inspired by a really good friend of mine in Edinburgh, who was in this relationship, which, as you say, it feels so relatable. I feel like everyone's had a similar experience to some degree of, some kind of unrequited love or some kind of relationship where it feels unbalanced, and the pain of that, and kind of staying in something for longer than maybe you should have, or at least known someone who's been through something like that and wanted to be like, you're so much better than this, but they can't see it because of the situation that they're in. So yeah, my friend was having a really hard time, and then she got out of it, and now she's really, really happy, which is great. And when she was in that place of kind of being able to look back on it, she sent me all these letters that she had wanted to write to this guy and never actually sent them. And she was like, do what you want with them, make them into a song. I'd love it to, become something in some way. And so, yeah, that was really cool that she let me tell her story in that way.
Again, it's a song I kind of think I wish I'd heard that when I was younger. It might have helped me in terms of certain things that were going on. You mentioned that you are now a mother and that, you know, you're kind of working around that, but also listening to some of your earlier music, particularly stuff that came out in 2020, it seems to me that that has driven you to kind of almost create more, to be more in you. The thought that came into my mind was, I remember that's an old quote from literary critic Cyril Connolly, and he says, you know, the death of art, something like the death of art is the pram in the hall. And then I listened to your songs and what you've written about them, and I think it's absolutely the opposite. You're using that as a sense of a determination to create, to continue to create.
Yeah, and I think when I got pregnant, I really didn't know which way it would go, and it could have been like that quote, because I was so wrapped up in the pregnancy. I was like so anxious and so kind of like, what is going on, and everything's focused on that. And I definitely took a big step back from being creative during that time. And then when I had my daughter, I found it really hard at the beginning. I had quite a horrible recovery physically and stuff, and it was just like I just had a few really hard months. And then when I came back to feeling good again, it was like this whole awakening of like, oh my God, you know, life is short. My life doesn't stop now that I'm a mum. And I think when you become a mother or a father or a parent, you're kind of grappling with this new sense of identity, and your life definitely changes, and so much of the things that you were free to do before, you're no longer free to do. And it's quite a, you know, like a huge adjustment. And I think with that, I just felt really, really determined to push and be creative and create the stuff that I want to create and just put it out there. And yeah, so it definitely, I didn't know that it was going to do that, but I felt so much more creative than I ever have since having her.
And you think that comes from this idea that it's important to set an example, to live your life the way that you want to do it?
I think so, yeah. Like, I really hope that when she grows up, that she'll look back and see that, you know, my husband and I have always followed our dreams and tried to do the stuff we want to do and supported each other, and that you can have a family and, you know, chase the stuff you want to chase and have a career, or try and push for a career, you know. I think that's really important. And it's been a really amazing sort of journey into it, because when I was going to start releasing music after having her, I was not going to even mention that I was a mum. I was like, that's just not cool. No one wants to know. I'll just like pretend that that's not happening. But then actually, I think it was the best thing to just really embrace it and talk about it. And a lot of those early songs were literally talking about becoming a mother. And through that, I've connected with loads of other female creatives who are mums, and joined this group, this organization called Mamas in Music, who are amazing. And they're trying to sort of fly the flags for creative mothers and break down some of the walls that are put up by, you know, that quote that you said is so much the old way of thinking that still survives now. And you even today, you kind of have to fight against that like the pram in the hallway, you're no longer creatively viable. And I think that there's still quite a lot to be done to make people feel that they have opportunities, you know, once they become a parent in this industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And those, I was thinking about your song How to Feel when it came out, I think in 2020. And when you were talking around it, there's a quote from you which says that love comes hand in hand with fear, which really struck a note. And I was wondering, time on, if you know how you feel about that kind of idea, and if the COVID period has made you kind of feel different about both.
I think definitely it still stands. It's not as potent as it was in those early days. I think I was at the beginning, the sense of responsibility bringing her home from the hospital, which is what that song's about, was so overwhelming to me. And it was like, the fear of something happening or losing her or something was just crazy. And I think so many people experience that, in that, whether it's becoming a parent or whether it's another huge shift in their life, you know, that fear. And I think it still is here now. Like, I think loving someone so much, it's a risk, because if something goes wrong, it's like, it's just going to be the worst thing in the world. So like, I think love and fear do come hand in hand. But me personally, I definitely it doesn't sort of impact my life as much as it used to, and I'm finding ways to kind of just make the fear chill out a bit and not worry so much. And COVID, yeah, I think that's been a really interesting one. I think that everyone's had a different response to it. I'm quite a hypochondriac and quite anxious about stuff anyway. So COVID in a weird way has kind of chilled me out, because it was like my worst nightmare, like a massive pandemic, and like, oh my God, everyone's getting this disease. And it was also stressful and scary. And it kind of, now I just feel a lot more relaxed about it now, because it's almost like, well, the worst has happened, or like something really bad's happened, and we're all just surviving and getting on now.
Yeah. No, it is interesting. I take How to Feel, the song, almost like there's no right or wrong way how to feel. It becomes individual, and you discover your own way of doing it.
Yeah, definitely. I think so.
So what are your plans and kind of hopes for 2022 and beyond?
So I've sorry, it's taking a swig of water. I've got some quite an exciting project in the works. So I've been applying for funding and stuff last year, and I've just before Christmas found out that I've been offered a grant to record and release my first EP, which is really exciting. Mm-hmm. So that's everything that's going on now. I'm just kind of, it's all sort of mapped out, and it's going to be working with different producers, and the sort of philosophy behind the project as well is trying to work in association with other mums in music. So a lot of the people that I'm working with making the tracks are mothers or women over 30, because it's also kind of looking at how youth focused the industry can be, and how once you turn a certain age, you also can be seen as less creatively viable and stuff. So the people that I'm working with, it's all about trying to promote and celebrate that demographic. And yeah, so I'm just in the kind of planning phases at the moment, and then recording will start up in February, and the first song should come out sort of springtime, and then carry on coming out towards the end of autumn. So that's going to take up a big chunk of this year.
Well, that's very exciting. Sounds like a really exciting project.
Yeah, it's quite overwhelming. I still can't believe that the grant came through. Like, I'm still literally trying to get my head around it, because it was such a huge application. Now I'm like, oh my God, it's happening. Like, I've actually got to do this.
Well, Roma, thank you so much for taking the time to have a chat. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been so lovely to speak to you.
And this is Roma Rose and her previous single, Earned Me.